All right. Peace, 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 everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, and welcome back to the Piper Carter podcast. You're listening to Piper Carter. I'm going to go on ahead and get the comment section going right away. Let me see. Do I want to dismiss this? I can't see what this says. Let me see what this says here. I think I want to dismiss. Yes. Okay. Boom. Get rid of some of these things that are on this screen so I don't get distracted. So what's up, everybody? Happy New Year. It's been a minute, right? I haven't been online in, I don't know. Well, I was online for New Year's, but haven't been on my channel for like a while. I'm doing a simulcast on Detroit is Different. So, shouts out to everyone in Detroit and beyond. I'm just going to give it a second. Let me see. Ooh, goodness. Let me try again. All right. Boom. So, welcome back. You're listening to the Piper Carter podcast. I'm your host, Piper Carter. Happy New Year. We got a chance to see one another. When did we see one another? For the state of Black Detroit. Like, who's afraid of the state of Black Detroit? I wonder, did y'all get a chance to check out the state of Black Detroit? If you haven't, please check those out. They're on, all the videos are on the Detroit is Different YouTube channel. You got some great commentary from people like myself, but then also, Yusuf Bunchy Shakur was a host. Shouts out to Kari Wade Frazier, the proprietor of Detroit is Different, and just a host of others. So speaking on various issues that are really important to us in Detroit. So I'm kind of chilly. That's why I got on like a sweater. I got on like a scarf. I'm gonna have to work on the lighting in here. I just got in here, so I apologize if the lighting is looking a little hood stizzle, because I just threw on the lights, so they're not designed at all tonight. And I hope that you can see me. Is it dark? Because this gives me a little bit lighter than what it should be, so I'm not sure. Drinking my ginger tea. Wow, that is spicy. I made ginger tea with real ginger, and it's kicking in right now. So come on in. 3 minutes after. Why don't I go ahead and get started? All right. So if you're new here, my name is Piper Carter. I'm one of the hosts on the Detroit is Different podcast network. So before I get started, I just want to ask folks to go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, whether you're listening on the Detroit is Different channel or whether you're listening on my channel. I did not connect us to the Instagrams today, but moving forward, I will connect us to the Instagrams. And if you're wondering what my channel is about, I talk a lot about environmental justice, feminism, hip hop, and all those cross sections. So if that's what you want to hear about, then you're in the right place. All right, boom. So I wanted to, it's been a lot of talk. I don't know. That interview with Shannon Sharp on Club Shay Shay, it went extra viral, as we know. It's only been a week. Today, Katt Williams did another sit down with Willie D. It was meh, but I feel like he was trying to clear some things up. And before I get started cooking, I just want to give it's not even a disclaimer. Like, I just want to let y'all know. I don't know Katt Williams. I don't have any connection or relationship to him. I've never met him. I've watched his stand-up. People say he's like one of the greatest of all time. I don't agree with that. And just to out myself, I'm a Richard Pryor girl, George Carlin, and I used to really love Dave Chappelle before he started going off the rails. And by the way, I did watch the Dave Chappelle special that came on. Was it like after? Anyway, I think I watched it after Club Shay Shay, and I thought that was meh as well. I want to say that people say that Katt Williams like so funny. I've watched most of Katt Williams specials. I can't say I've seen every single one, but I've definitely seen more than half of them. And there are some are better than others, but I've never completely like sat through and then like my side was hurting. Maybe one or two jokes in each one. Maybe it's me. Um People have said, "Well, what type of humor do you like?" I like witty humor, satire, um, political humor, and I had a conversation with a comrade before this that was like, in essence, like it's unfair to kind of judge comedy in that way. So I just want to say that for me, what I really love about Richard Pryor, right? Because for me, he's the top. I also love, like I said, George Carlin. But what I love about Richard Pryor is that while he may have had some lowbrow or even raunchy jokes, he had his humor, like he was so funny that he was just funny. He's got a lot of jokes where he's just talking about scenarios or he's just acting things out. Like some of the ones where he talks about just like being in the woods with his dad. Super funny. I think he's able to convey, simple things as humorous. And I'm not saying that he is a saint, right? I'm saying that what I do appreciate is that while he's able to connect with the audience with anecdotes that are relatable or, cultural memes and norms that, Black community would know about. And he did come up in a time when, right, I'd say at the Black Power movement and beyond, where, we really needed to I'd say be more realistic, right? So the 70s in and of itself was a period of realism, and what I mean by that, even all the horror was super realistic. Just media in general just went into this realm of like reality, right? And we're coming out of the civil rights era, and so you think about media or comedy and things that were presented to the world in like the 50s, right, or the 60s, and it's still this whole like family values type of comedy, right? And then when things are kind of edgy, they're not really presented in like that public of a venue, right? They might be like at the club, so it was age appropriate, and so you would have heard about it, right? And I can appreciate like a Red Fox, right? Rest in peace, rise in power to these greats. And I understand that Katt Williams kind of comes out of that tradition, as well as like a Lenny Bruce, right? Who arguably was made his whole career on intentionally being offensive. And I would probably argue that Katt Williams probably intends to offend. I think that's his comedic style. Some of the specifics around Katt Williams in terms of his style, I would say that I don't really connect with is, the ways in which he portrays himself as this person who really cares about people and women, but yet and still consistently his comedy doesn't reflect that. You know what I'm saying? So, I could kind of go all over the place. I've written like a lot of different points that I definitely wanted to cover. And so, I think I want to just like go to like a couple of my points that I outlined here. And again, this is just a little outline. Um, and the only reason that I, could have outlined it so I wouldn't go completely, you know what I'm saying, like off the rails. So, let me see. Um, Let me see what I have here. Some of these, I think some of these notes might have like disappeared or whatever, but it's okay. Let me just go over here to join. Oh, because I'm not connected to the Wi-Fi. Let me see. Can I get on this Wi-Fi? Um, well, I'll use this Wi-Fi here. All right, boom. So, also to shout out to everyone who joined me, everyone who's listening with me. I appreciate you for listening. I'm gonna use my phone because for some reason my computer is not connecting to la internet. Um, so yeah, all right, boom. Okay. Let me go back up here to the top. So, again, Katt Williams is known, his comedy is what is like super edgy, and intentionally controversial. Um, and we know that he, in the past has been, I want to say a person of, of, flexible, what's the word I'm trying to say, personality, right? Like, I don't know if y'all know about in 2012 when he got into the little tiffy jiffy. I think it was maybe it was Denver or someplace, and he spit on the audience member and jumped off the stage and ended the show like, only after half hour, and people wanted their money back. I guess he had some sort of meltdown. I don't know, meltdown might be offensive term. I'm not sure. Is meltdown an offensive term? Mm. But so we know about that. Because he got heckled. What else did I want to say? So I think in his comedy, we get a chance to hear about a lot of his beliefs. And I think I wanted to center, before I go there, let me make sure I say this. Because my friend said to make sure I say this, that Katt Williams is a person who in the material world, in real life, actually in his community in Dayton and I think Cincinnati, actually, does a lot of community work and supports a lot of community people through supporting various projects and donating and this kind of thing. So I said that before I go 10 toes down. But so with that, we get to hear about a lot of his beliefs. Something I think is interesting is how he talks about how he was raised in this very religious or strictly religious household that he couldn't tolerate. But yet and still we gotta tolerate his, religious beliefs. I don't know if you noticed, like every time he says something disrespectful, he like credits his relationship with God, which I think, I don't know, for me that's blasphemy. Like every time you're disrespectful, then it's like, oh, because I knew that I was a child of God and I knew I had the closest relationship to God than anyone else and I was special and all these things and any hooty rooty tooty. It's just interesting. But we know that, right, like in comedy, like, comedians use humor to like push boundaries, and that can be offensive, right? And controversial, depends on who you intend to offend. And he does have a lot of political humor. And I'd say he does portray himself as a person who is on the side like of the people, right? This is from, I'd say, from his perspective, what he tries to portray. And so I say like that doesn't necessarily in and of itself like it, mean that he is a misogynist, right? But what I would like to do is do some examination because I want to ask the question, is he a misogynist? Or does his humor hold misogynistic um, tropes and stereotypes that are harmful? And it's not about like Katt Williams in and of himself, right? Like per se, I would say maybe zoom it out a bit and ask about comedy because I have this conversation with comedians all the time about misogyny. hmm They're just questions. So, I know comedians exaggerate stereotypes because they want to make a point, but I question whether consistently exaggerating stereotypes, are we like revealing that these stereotypes exist or are we continuing to perpetuate these stereotypes, right? Right, comedians. So I know that, a lot of his humor is to provoke laughter. And like I said, to highlight different societal issues. And as I spoke with my mentee who reminded me that the point of comedy is to entertain. So I'm trying to figure out are folks entertained by misogyny? Like, is that entertaining? I'm not sure. I'm not. So that's why I'm asking the question. And it's also important to remember that comedy is subjective, right? So what one person might find offensive, another person might find funny, right? Like Dave Chappelle, for instance, punching down on people with disabilities. Is it humor to make fun of people with disabilities? Is it humorous? Or was there like a point that was being illuminated? Was he like trying to make people aware of, people with disabilities? Or I would argue that he was trying to get some cheap jokes, right? Like, and the same thing with Katt Williams. I don't know if y'all remember the one special, which Pimp Chronicles was it? Anyway, the one with the green. And he did the one joke about the little Mexican girl, and he was skipping, like he said she had on a little dress and her sneakers. And in the joke, he called her a bitch. And so, I know that comedians use this language or whatever, but I didn't find that funny. And I'll tell you why. And maybe it's too much, maybe I've been this person all this time that's like too much. Everyone says, oh, it's too much, too much. I don't like the idea of normalizing calling children bitches, or hoes or nigga. Like, to me, it's not funny. And to me, it's not humorous. Like, to me, it actually in the real world perpetuates some of these attitudes, like the normalization of like calling a child a bitch. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you agree, maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. I'm not sure. So those were like a couple of my points. And I wanted to maybe like explore like some of his statements and interviews, right, where he discusses his comedic intent. So I don't know, did y'all see the Willie D today? If you saw the Willie D, let me know. Like I said, I thought it was just like so, but I think while Willie D did try to probe him a little more, I give it to Willie D, he did try to probe him a little more or less, Katt Williams really just gave the same interview. He may have gone a little bit deeper into a couple of places and slightly different in other spaces. But But for the most part, I think that it was pretty much the same interview. And I'm wondering, like, I feel like he shouldn't have done a follow-up interview like so soon. I feel like it was too soon. I feel like he should have waited like maybe a little bit, because I mean, it's been a week. He could have let that interview cook. I feel like maybe he was trying to hop on the bandwagon or get, some of the wave of people that were, off that whole thing. But I do think that all in all, he probably should have waited maybe like another week, because I feel like that interview was so hot. It could have cooked another week and he could have let people do their thing, and then, really let people linger on wanting to like hear from Katt. Like maybe that's just me and a little bit of thinking about media. But and then I wanted to talk about the interview a little bit, like some of the statements that Katt was saying. I feel like I told people this a little bit. I'm like, I call Katt, peace being frank, I call Katt with Katt Williams, like some of the things he said. Like I call Katt about that reading of 3,000 books per year. I think that was satirical humor. I don't think that he read 3,000 books a year. When he went on to Willie D, he changed the number to 10,000 books by the time he was 12. So I think he probably been telling that to himself since he was 12, and just kept it going. But, do I doubt that he was great at reading? I don't know. Maybe he was. Who knows? And for whatever reason, he created that reality or scenario for himself so that could give him, some level of, I don't know, esteem possibly, or respect. I think also too, something that kind of annoyed me, and it's just about, I feel like, well, it wasn't really annoying. Like, I honor and respect that he said he's got a special coming up. I don't know what he did say, May or March, and he's trying to sell his special. I get that. So this for me was probably like some sort of rollout where he was like, yeah, I'm going to, go on this podcast, and everyone, gonna get some excitement so I can sell these tickets. So I get that. Like, I don't, I respect the hustle. But I guess I kind of look at it like the color purple thing. I'm gonna get in trouble. But just like with the Color Purple movie, right? I won't say I call Katt with Taraji, but I will say that in her rounds of talking about pay inequality, I don't accept that was brought up because she cares about people. I call Katt that was brought up because, I'm trying to, look out for the ones who come after me, right? Because Monique said the same thing. And I don't know what happened, or, there's something funky in the fish, but the whole rollout for that film is around like, Taraji wasn't paid well. And I don't know if you saw Oprah's clapback and was like, I don't know what you want me to do. I'm just a producer. So, but we all know that if the film went well, that Oprah gets to claim, yeah, I was the producer. And, but doesn't want to be like, accept the accountability, like I'm the producer, when it's like, oh, there was like no food, and all the other, you weren't paid well, you didn't, you're driving your own car, like all the things that Taraji was highlighting, right? The ways in which they were not taken care of on that set. And I'm saying that to say that the whole talk about the film is about that. So I wonder, and I know like my family went to see the film. I know some people went to see the film, but I wonder after New Year's or even after Christmas, we're like that rollout was terrible. I wonder where people even, I wonder did they lose money or oh. But any hootie rooty tootie, I was equating those things because I feel like the same thing with Katt. I feel like Katt says that he is doing things for people, right? So he's on there bragging, right? Like, look what all I did for these other comedians. Look what I did for these people. Look at me. I've adopted children. I'm so great. Why wouldn't I adopt children that aren't even mine? And it'd be one thing if he said it once, but it's like he keeps saying it like in every interview, which makes me look a little side-eyed. And also too, he keeps saying like how he helped all these women and put people on his shows and how much he cares about women. But what I struggle with when he says he cares about women, I'm like, you say you care about women, but, and maybe he was being satirical or whatever, and I know we're in 2024 and people refer to themselves and others as bitches, but when he said, oh, the proof that I care about women, because I have satin pillowcases for the bitches for their hair when they come, and the bitch's hair can she can be comfortable, that she can lay on a satin pillowcase. That proves that I care about women. I don't know. That annoyed me like so much. And also too, his whole persona that he came out on is around being a pimp. And I find that harmful. I find like the whole pimp persona to be harmful. We've seen the Diddy explosion and the Epstein explosion and the Weinstein explosion. Like, I just find all of the normalization of these types of personas to be harmful because they perpetuate the normalization of these personas. That's what I think. I don't think it's just entertainment. Also, too, I call Katt because Katt Williams was bragging about, oh, I rewrote my piece. I rewrote my role for Friday After Next. And he was like, oh, I redid it because it was going to be a rape scene, and rape is never funny. Now, I agree. There's nothing funny about rape. And the reason I call Katt is because the entire role of Terry Crews was a person who was released from prison and was looking to rape people. Like, that was the one-dimensional character. And when he went into the bathroom, he did sexually assault Money Mike. Katt Williams' character was sexually assaulted in the bathroom. That's sexual assault. He was literally fighting for his life. Okay, yeah, we didn't see like an actual penis penetrate any orifice, but it's still traumatizing that someone that's bigger than you and stronger than you, and you're in the bathroom in a vulnerable state, you're going to relieve yourself, and they come in the bathroom and overpower you. And he saw the vice grip on the toilet, he thought quickly and grabbed him as like some sort of survival thing. But my thing is like, maybe that was an inside joke, because not joke, maybe that was some sort of inside thing between him and Cube. I'm not sure, because in Cube's response, Cube seemed very humble in his response. I don't know if that humility, it had a tinge of a feeling that humility was around like the statement that Katt made around rape isn't funny. So maybe It was that Katt was like, "Yo, rape's not funny. I don't think this should be in here at all." They went back and forth, and then they took out, the most advanced version of that scene, but they kept those parts. I don't know, maybe that's what happened. But I do want to say that for all that Katt Williams was talking about, Money Mike was sexually assaulted in the bathroom. And let me say that I had not seen Friday After Next, and I had not wanted to see Friday After Next. And the only reason I watched that film was because of this interview, the one with Shannon Sharp. And it was a waste of my life's force energy, to be honest. The first Friday, I'm not gonna hold y'all. The first Friday, y'all gonna say, "Oh, Pipe, you're a hater," but I still think that the jokes first Friday were meh. Some of them, couple of them were super funny, but a lot of them were just meh. It was silliness, goofiness, and that I'm not into like goofy humor like that. That's just not. I'm not into goofy ass humor. I'm just not. And a lot of the movie was just on some goofy stuff. It was just goofy. Yeah, it's a classic. A lot of people launched their careers off of it. Shouts to Ice Cube for making an independent production. So all of that stuff that people, want to praise black people for. But for all it's worth, I mean, it's a whole nother stream. But Ice Cube's a capitalist. You know what I'm saying? And we could dig into his music, and he was a part of NWA that arguably was one of the groups that like supported ushering in this whole wave of overt misogyny, and violence towards women, and perpetuated it. And I can't say that they created it, but I will say that NWA's music and even Ice Cube's music perpetuated a lot of violence towards women. And here we fast forward and find out that Dre was beating the brakes off of Michelle A. Beat the brakes, off of D Barnes, and was very violent. So when we say, "Oh, it's just entertainment," or it's just, I don't buy it, because again, we're looking at hip hop. It's connected to comedy, because I would argue that Katt Williams' version of comedy is intertwined with hip hop. Not only because he is one of those comedians who, came out to a lot of music in his stand-up. Everybody knows him from, what is it, the Rick Ross, the "Every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, 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 hustling." That joke, arguably who he got it from, we'll see. Maybe so, maybe no, I don't know. But and many other hip hop artists that he, incorporated into his opening and his act and things like that. So I would argue that Katt Williams is a hip hop comedian, or of the Def Jam lineage of comedy, of interfusing the hip hop with the comedy. And I would argue it's a whole culture. I'm gonna take y'all back. In Detroit, we used to have a comedy club called B's Comedy Kitchen. I used to wait tables there. I had finished college, so it was like early mid 90s, and it was an elder named B and her son. It was downtown, and all the comedians used to go there. I mean, Spanky, downtown Tony Brown. Shouts out to downtown Tony Brown. Now, you want to talk about funny? Downtown Tony Brown. Dave Chappelle used to tell me all the time, The downtown Tony Brown was like one of the funniest comedians ever. And guess what? He was downtown Tony Brown was so now downtown Tony Brown had this werewolf joke about the werewolf waiting at the bus stop, and that will have your side hurting. Most of his joke, like downtown Tony Brown, is arguably one of the funniest comedians on earth. Like top, like 3 in the world. Trust me. But downtown Tony Brown was there. Mike Bonner used to be there. And then there were a lot of Detroit comedians that were there. Coco, shouts out to Coco. A lot of comedians came through there, and shouts out to Kool-Aid. I went to high school with Kool-Aid. Rest in peace, rise in power, Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid used to be me and him. We went to high school together. We were in the same grade, so we were in the same like social circle. And Kool-Aid, see at my high school, and if you went to a black high school in the hood, you were in the lunchroom, and you were what we did was we made beats with our mouth and bang on the table and rap, freestyle, and snap on each other. Like, and it was like a whole cultural thing of like, I guess maybe that's the origin of hip hop and comedy. But in the 80s, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, that's what we did. And Kool-Aid was one of those people who used to get in trouble. If I'm not mistaken, I think Kool-Aid was class clown. I think he got class clown for our class in 1990, in our yearbook. And he was one of the top comedians here in Detroit. He passed away a couple years ago. And he was battling cancer. But Kool-Aid was arguably like super funny, and got his start from back then, and was at B's all the time. And I was a waitress there, so I got a chance to see like all the top comedians in Detroit, plus all the people who were on the rise at the time. Because I told y'all Spanky was one of the regulars there. This is before that Wild 'N Out. It's like 94. Right? 90, yeah, like 94. And all the top comedians would be there. And a lot of the comedians, they would tell the same jokes. Maybe they were perfecting their jokes. Maybe, I guess that's what a lot of comedians do, is like they write their jokes and then they say the same jokes like every week, but they try to say them a little different because they'll land a little different. What's interesting to me, there's a lot of regulars that come to the comedy clubs. And so the comedians kind of develop, like their following, because people will come to like see that comedian. What always interested me was that people would come and hear the same joke like every single week. And I remember like from those lunchroom days, yes, it's not the professional comedy club, I'm just telling you, my lunchroom days, you couldn't say the same joke. Like you couldn't like get props or claps or whatever y'all call it, clout, from saying the same joke. Like you had to say different jokes. If you snapped and did the same joke, you either got like booed or people just didn't respect you. And it was interesting to me. Maybe that is the nature of the comedy clubs, where people go to kind of practice their thing, saying the same things over and over and over. But I can say, working at B's, I did used to get tired of people's jokes. I did. I got tired of their jokes, because after a while, it's like you just hear the same joke every, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or whatever days, you're working there. And these comedians are coming. That's why I say downtown Tony Brown, he had a couple of jokes that he would save that he didn't do every time, right? I mean, so they were his regular jokes, but he didn't say them every single time you saw him. But he would he had like a couple that he would do much of the time. A lot of the other comedians would do their jokes pretty much all the time. And what I noticed about working at Bees, and I'm kind of giving you this because I guess I'm trying to give you my credentials, but working at Bees and getting a chance to see these people like tell these same jokes all the time and practice these same jokes all the time, something I noticed, maybe it was the culture of comedy, maybe it had something to do with the whole like creation of the Def Comedy Jam and the BET Comic View and these type of spaces. But I noticed that whereas comedians would have their style and they would create scenarios or stories, and then with it, like again, maybe they set up a joke and maybe their joke is full of a lot of just hard punchlines and just going boom, 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 like little, mini stories within stories, or maybe some of them were like longer setups to where, they would spend an extended part of time, like connecting you to like this character, and then at the end they'll hit you with something that would be satirical or ironic, But I noticed that as time would move on, a lot of comedians were just going for like the cheap laugh or that cheap joke. You know what I'm saying? The lowbrow, goofy, not witty. And it was stuff that I just felt was not funny. Like, it's not funny to me calling women bitches. Like, if you say, oh, this bitch this and this bitch that, and you know what this bitch did and this bitch did, like, it's not funny. It's just not funny. All these jokes about people's weight. Oh, this fat person this and this fat person that and this fat person. It's like, that's not funny. Like telling a person who would identify as a fat person that they're fat, that's not humor. Like there's nothing funny about that. Okay, you just told someone they're fat. Where's the joke? There's no humor in that. You're just relying on that same lunchroom, because in the lunchroom it was like super juvenile. You're in high school, you're children, but now you've been telling these dumbass jokes for a decade or two, and it's just the same dumb joke. One-legged this, one-eyed that. Some, at a certain period for a while there, it was like, you're so black. You're, going in on people for being dark skinned. Going in on people for being black. You black this, black that, black. And it was like, there's nothing funny about being black. Where's the joke in someone being dark skinned? It's not a joke. It's not funny. Okay. Someone has short hair. Oh, bald head, bitch. Okay. What's funny about someone having like short hair? I don't understand what's funny about having short hair. So someone has no hair or short hair, or their hair can't grow, or making a joke about someone whose hair can't grow. These aren't jokes. And even like the delivery. So arguably, like someone could say, oh, well, it's the delivery. But even the delivery, like 9 times out of 10, most people are just delivering an insult. They're just hurling an insult. It's not funny. It's not a joke. And I'm saying that to say that while Katt Williams is better than many of the like average comedians that are out there, but I would say that he employs a lot of those cheap techniques and tactics to try to get the cheap laugh. And what I don't like about that is, like, I could throw on a Richard Pryor record or video or whatever, and it lasts. Like, it's still funny. those cheap jokes, maybe they're funny to a person who had 3 or 4 drinks, um, goes out to the club and for like that couple of little hours is having a good time. But like to me, the taped routine with this material is trite. It's offensive for no reason. And the biggest thing, it's not funny. It's not funny. It's just not funny. The misogyny is not funny. The consistent, hurling insults is not funny. There's no punchlines. I mean, sometimes there's a little bit of a story set up, but even at the end, it's just not funny. And I guess that's kind of where I wanted to center our conversation is around the culture of comedy. Because I've had this particular conversation with comedians, and my arguments are, and I'm gonna name because I can go off the rails, but some of my arguments are normalizing disrespectful language, right? So jokingly using derogatory language, like even in humor, can normalize and perpetuate the disrespectful behavior, right? That transcends someone going to see at comedy. And it can send a message that it's acceptable to use that language even when you're describing individuals, right? So bringing that into the culture, the normalized culture of society, right? Peace, Afro. Peace, Akira. Good to see you. Impacting perceptions, right? So language has the power to shape perceptions and attitudes. So using derogatory terms, even in jest, can contribute to negative stereotypes and biases, which can have real world consequences. So for instance, it's like, what comes first, chicken or egg? You know what I'm saying? A movie that people find humorous that I don't is the movie Players Club. And I know Bernie Mac is in the Players Club, and rest in power, rise in power, Bernie Mac. I know he's supposed to be funny, and Bernie Mac did have some funny jokes, but, not to speak ill of the dead, but I'll kind of leave it here. Let's just say that a lot of that character in that film, right? In my opinion, that film in and of itself, like, I appreciate that we want to have stories of the full experience of Blackness. And I wonder if consistently making these kinds of films keeps perpetuating this culture into our culture, if that makes sense, right? So, and there are questions. I'm not trying to like point fingers or be, holier than thou, but when we look at things like human trafficking, and Detroit is one of the capitals of human trafficking, right? If not the capital. All of the violence, right? Like the normalization of the sexual violence, not just against women, but also the sexual violence against men. You understand what I'm saying? Like the ways in which laughing, like that scene, that rape scene in Players Club, like, I'm not gonna lie, that was traumatizing. I couldn't take it, even to this day. I couldn't watch it. I didn't want to watch it. I was upset that they actually like got that graphic and with that subject matter. Like, it would have been enough for me to, not have to experience that trauma. You know what I'm saying? And I get it. It's like, oh, it's entertainment. I'm just wondering, I'm glad that people get their coin and are making their films and are, being successful in business and media and own their companies and are doing writing, and people are buying their merch and going to see their shows, and they're doing films and they're producing and they're hiring other actors, and we're seeing more Black stories. All that part, wonderful. And for 2024, I want to understand, like, how are we elevating? How are we moving forward? We can have this conversation about Taraji getting her money, and even that's misogyny, right? The fact that misogynoir, the fact that Taraji has to go on a tour when she's supposed to be promoting the movie, which arguably takes away from the other actresses. Like, we don't even really get to hear from any of these other actresses about their experience or their performance or their their artistry or their life, or we don't even get to hear anything about any of these other women that were in that film, because we've got to hear about how disrespected Taraji was, right, in this movie. I'm gonna go to the chat because I see one of my mentors wrote something. And shouts out to Mama Ngia. Said, I once thought about pursuing stand-up, but I realized that most comedy is based on negative stereotypes and slutty kind of sexual references. A friend was performing at B's one time, so I went. I had to leave. The comedy was offensive, especially watching Black comics make jokes off of Black misery, etc. And I saw that the comics, Black and non-Black, relied on slutty sex jokes if their set wasn't going well. That's my point that I would, thank you, Mama Gia. That's my point that I was saying earlier around when we'd be in the lunchroom. I want to acknowledge that we were kids. And like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? But we were kids in the lunchroom, snapping on each other like kids do. And it was funny back then. And those same kinds of jokes are what makes up like 99.99999% of Black comedy. Now, I'm talking about Black comedy because for me, that's the only comedy that exists. I don't know about other people's comedy. So maybe I'm ignorant. The comedy I see is mostly Black people, and it's men and women doing degrading women. It's men and women degrading women. And so, like Mama Gia was saying, that this perpetuation of these negative stereotypes, for instance, help to normalize things like police violence. Now, I'm going to get a lot of pushback about that. I know. And I'm not saying, or what I am saying, let me say what I am saying. We live in a system of white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, right? Where sexism and misogyny, misogynoir, like all that is very real. There are systems of oppression, and there are oppressors, and there are people who are put in positions of power to gatekeep and all of that. So I don't want to make it seem like all this stuff has to be on the artist, or like all the burden has to be on the listener. I do want to acknowledge that these projects are the projects that get greenlit, right? I do want to acknowledge that there are scripts in films that are presented, and there are people, Black or otherwise, who are in a position of power, Black and non-Black, that are in a position of power, who can say whether the script is greenlight or not. And if the script comes and it's like, oh, that needs to be, in this way, because that's gonna get like more of a laugh, because people laugh at that, because we did research and we did these focus groups and we noticed that that's what people want to see. I would argue that audiences in 2024 are mature enough to want to see various depictions of blackness and black realities that have previously not been seen. And that there's ways to do them that are funny, that don't perpetuate violence against women, that don't perpetuate violence against people in general, right? Like, don't perpetuate these negative stereotypes. This is not misogyny, but I would say, if y'all remember when Chris Rock was doing all those jokes about niggas, and black people, where he basically was justifying, or gave, his audience is largely not black, is largely white and people that are, have money and power. He's a person that's looked to, like, look at him, he represents the black community for y'all. And when he was saying there's a difference between niggas and black folks, these types of jokes are very harmful, because they do allow for, I'm gonna get so much pushback from this, but they do allow for folks to normalize, like, police violence against niggas who don't deserve the respect of black folks, right? And just like I'm giving that example because I'm saying that I see it working as well in misogyny and misogynoir, On Purpose said Katt acts like an agent with the goal to promote black self-hate. It's interesting that you say that, and I want to bring up that other joke again, because that joke, and I know it was some years ago, and I'm hoping, because Katt's saying he's going to do his special in, was it May or March of this year, 2024, and I know this is all to promote his special and things. I'm hoping that he gets rid of those kinds of jokes. I know he wants to be provocative and satirical and shocking and, all these things, but that joke that he has about the little girl skipping in the laundromat and he calls her a bitch, like, that really hurt me to my core, because I'm like, there's nothing funny about calling a child a bitch, a little girl a bitch. And the age that he was portraying, if you remember, he was skipping, it's the woman he has on the green. That age when you skip like that, what are you, 5, 6, 7? Like, I don't want, like, that's not funny to me. I don't want that in my humor. I don't want that humor. That's not my it's not funny to me. I'm gonna just say that's not funny to me. Let me see. So I guess that leads to another point about modeling behavior, right? So comedians often have a significant influence on their audience when they use derogatory language, and it can inadvertently encourage their audience to use similar language in their own interactions. Again, it's, maybe it's whatever to people, but I think, people do repeat these things in their family lives, joking with one another, in their work environments. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I guess to me, when I'm saying like the modeling, again, it's such a normalization to where it's difficult for people to even become aware of it because it's so normalized, right? So it's difficult to become aware of violence against women or it's difficult to become aware of that stuff if it's normalized. I'm not trying to make it like it's a all or nothing. I'm just trying to offer um an alternative viewpoint. Mhm. Drinking my ginger water. Whew. And this might be the same thing, but it reinforces harmful norms, right? So jokes that use derogatory language can reinforce harmful norms and attitudes, especially if the language is directed at marginalized or vulnerable groups. Again, um, I do want to say that I get it. Comedy is very complex and it is a subjective form of expression, right? And Katt Williams is trying to push boundaries and he's trying to push societal norms. That's not to take away from his political humor. I would love to see him lean more into his political humor. Some of that stuff was hilarious. Um, some of his humor as a dad is kind of funny. Um, kind of funny. But again, like if we look at a Richard Pryor, he's my favorite because although he did, now let's reel it back. Richard Pryor was very problematic. I acknowledge that in more ways than one. Rest in peace. Not to talk ill of the dead. You can look up his track record with women. That's not to elevate him. I'm talking about his humor in this moment. But his humor, right? He was so funny that he actually was able to make you laugh off of something that was so mundane. And what I want to differentiate is that a lot of these comedians have humor. Well, no, it's not funny, so it's not humor. A lot of these comedians think they're being funny when they're just hurling insults. And they think that they're doing like this nuance, like mundane jokes or mundane storytelling. What's mundane is the humor or the lack thereof. Like again, Richard Pryor told stories about his grandmother, about his dad, about him, about mistakes he made, about just the simple life where he grew up in Indiana. Like he made you feel like you were really there with him, right? When he would walk on the sticks and stop, or he would, relay with his like a story or a moment between him and his, grandparent or his parent. And granted, he had a very problematic childhood. A lot of terrible things happened to him, all of that. Like again, I'm talking about his jokes and his humor. I feel that he was able to be relatable because he was such a great storyteller and because he was able to create and find humor in the mundane. And I think that Katt has this deep in him. I think Dave has it too. Dave has exhibited it. It's sad to see that Dave has devolved into just hurling insults at people with disabilities. And I think it's harmful, right? I think that stuff is like super harmful. Let me see. There were some other points. Also desensitization, right? So continuous exposure to derogatory language, even in a comedic context, can desensitize people to its offensiveness. And over time, individuals may become less sensitive to the impact of derogatory words, making them more likely to use such language casually without considering its harm. And I think that desensitization point, what we call it, sometimes we call it apathy, cognitive dissonance, but in essence, it allows for the normalization of atrocious things that we should be fighting against to be accepted as like these people deserve that. You know what I'm saying? Um, I think the harmfulness of a lot of the misogynistic humor, especially the misogyny towards black women, is because we don't have equity in society when it comes to black women. Black women aren't safe, right? For the most part. And I would, for the most part. And so while we say, oh, well, it's just humor or whatever, it lands differently on black women who still have to navigate this world while um unintentionally holding these stereotypes. I'll tell you a story. I used to I used to be in the fashion world, whatever. And as I was climbing the ladder, I was I want to say pioneering in a space as the first black woman. And because of that, people hadn't seen a black woman in those roles and often did not know how to act or behave. And because much of their experiences were where black people were in subservient roles, that was their default, right? Their go-to. So they would see me and tell me to go to the back. When we would travel, they would say, that I couldn't get my own room. I had to share with the fellas because I was trying to be a man and do a man's job. And so oftentimes I'd be in these luxurious spaces. We're doing Vogue and Elle and Harper's Bazaar, and we're in all of these exotic spaces in these amazing hotels and things. And I have to sleep in the bathtub because I don't want to get sexually assaulted. Right. And when I would go to the magazine editor or the person in charge to say, hey, I got to get my own room, I'd be met with more or less that you black women want to be men. And basically like that you're used to having sex with people, whether you want to have sex with them or not. You're naturally more looser. You're naturally more slutty is like the terms they would use. And so you should be used to that. And so your safety, like, it doesn't make sense that you're asking to be safe because that is not a reality for black women. Like, and they used a hip hop reference because it was at the time when Foxy Brown was out, and they would make a joke and say about, Il Nana, make the tatas go cha cha. But my material reality was like, I am on the crew. I'm the leader of the crew. I'm like the boss. I'm in another land. I've traveled from United States. I'm like 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 hours time difference. Because I'm leading the crew, whatever country we're in, I've got to be the first one there at 5 and 6 a.m. every single day and be ready to work 20 hours a day. Hard manual labor, in addition to making other people do their job, a lot of white men. And it's backbreaking work as well as mentally draining because it's photography. So you're constantly thinking of f-stop, shutter speed, and all those combinations that have to change all the time because the light conditions are changing and you're putting up lights and filters and color corrections and all the things, in addition to the lenses and the cameras and the lighting and the this and the that, all the things. And I've got to make sure that the equipment is okay. I've got to make sure, that all these things are in place. And when I'm done and we're all packed up, everybody gets to go to the hotel and maybe they go hang out at the disco, or maybe they go to dinner. I can't do that because I got to get some sleep, because I got to be back the next morning one time to do my job. And I've got to sleep in the bathtub because you put me in a room with two white men that I don't even know. And they're basically threw me in there because I'm like food. I'm supposed to be food for them. And the reason that I'm saying that I do take some of this stuff personally is because of the jokes that I would be told about this sort of sapphire Jezebel view of black women, the normalcy of how black women, don't have agency or access to safety for around our bodies, right? Now, that's an extreme example. That's my personal experience. I'm using it, though, as an antidote to say that there are people who suffer real-world consequences because of the normalization of stereotypes in media. That doesn't take away that the studios greenlight all this stuff, that, these producers and things ask people to make jokes more offensive. It doesn't take away from the larger industry's culpability to, shift and change. And as we move into 2024, it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? I've been in those meetings, and you know what they say in those meetings? And they say the same thing around not having black people in movies. They say the same thing around not having positive characters in films. They say the same things around not having, different kinds of hip hop. They say the same things around all the ways in which, when we ask ourselves, well, why don't we have this, or why don't more of these get funded? It's the same conversation. And they blame you, the viewer. They say it's the viewer's fault because this is what viewers want to see. Because when we did our Nielsen ratings, or we did our focus group, or we looked at the numbers, this is what people paid money to see, and this is what people want to go see. I'm going to push back against that, because I'm going to say that the studios were shaking in their boots when something like a Napster came along, or they had to control YouTube. They had to take control of YouTube and all these other spaces because people didn't want to be fed the same old media that they had always been fed. And I'm going to put it on the audience and say that a lot of my audiences are very astute people who have various interests in their music, in their culture, what they want to see, entertainment. I do think that in 2024, we're tired of these stereotypes. I think they are late and tired and trite. I think these stand-up routines that normalize even verbal violence against women and girls, I think that's not what we want to see. I think people want to see more interesting stories that are full of humor, that are funny. I think there's ways for us to tell stories. I think more of us want to see ourselves in different light. It doesn't have to be, kumbaya. There's ways to tell our stories where it's authentic, hilarious, and top quality. And another thing, when Ice Cube, I don't know if y'all went back and watched Ice Cube, and he was saying how he always puts out top quality stuff. That Friday after next and the next Friday are not top quality. And honestly, my baby, neither is Friday. I think Friday is a classic because it's not top quality. No shade. You made it. You did that, But I kind of said this already, but I'll just read a couple of things more that I had. Um, it has a huge impact on vulnerable groups. So, like I said, certain individuals and groups may be disproportionately affected by derogatory language. And when comedians target these groups with offensive language, it can contribute to further marginalization, stigmatization, and discrimination against those communities. And I will say, I kind of gave you an illustration, my personal example. I would argue that that is what we have been seeing in comedy, Black comedy, up to this point. hmm Mm. So, any hootie Rudy Tootie, I had people hit me up before this stream, and they were like, "Be careful." I'm talking about Katt Williams, because everybody loves Katt Williams, and he does great things for people, and people love him, and he helps all these comedians, and he adopted kids, and he takes people on tour, and he pays them, and he creates opportunities for people. And when he comes to the city, he actually puts down for the city, and pays for the city. I don't take any of that away from him. This is my charge to Katt Williams and his fans, and anybody that can get at him, and any other comedians that are here. My challenge is, I want to see Katt Williams use his actual wit, his actual talent, to have a completely funny set. I want his set that he does whenever it comes, May, March, whatever, 2024. I want his set to be so funny. I want it to be funny minus the misogyny. I do. I would like to see him do way more political humor. I think it's a good year to do political humor. There's a lot going on. I'd like to see him do a little bit more family man, father humor. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wanna see him dig deeper into his consciousness, and dig deeper into his talent, and dig deeper into his wit and his actual comedic sensibilities. I want to see him dig. I want to see him do that work. I don't want to see no more lazy comedy. I don't want to see it from Katt, and I don't want to see it from Dave either, because like I said, that special that I watched after I watched the Katt interview was lazy. Very lazy, Dave. I want to see these comedians do better. I want to see them do better and better and better. So I want to thank, what's up, Embreeze? I want to thank everyone that has joined me so far. I appreciate y'all for hopping on here for a quick second. Again, my name is Piper Carter. This is Piper Carter Podcast. Happy New Year, everyone. My New Year's resolution, is to be more consistent with my podcast. I admit I hadn't really been consistent. My mom's passing in 2021 took a real toll on me, and I'm coming to terms with that in this moment. And so I took some time for myself to just come on when I could and not when I couldn't. And fast forward now, this is going to be the third year. I'm ready to start to heal my heart. I'm ready to start to get up out the bed and be able to normalize doing some things that are good for me, that I like doing, like coming here and doing these podcasts with y'all. And so I have another podcast that I do on Mondays, and it's dedicated to women in hip hop. And it's called Beyond Breaking Barriers. And that one, I strictly talk about women in hip hop. So if you are on YouTube and you go to the Black Power Media channel, like, share, subscribe to the Black Power Media channel on Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I do a podcast centered on women in hip hop called Beyond Breaking Barriers. And on Tuesdays, I have my podcast, the Piper Carter Podcast, and that'll be here on YouTube. I did this show here as a simulcast on Detroit is Different, but if I'm going to be talking about like international issues and national issues and stuff like that, I'm going to keep that stuff more to like my channel. But if I'm going to be centering like Detroit issues, then I'm going to do the simulcast on the Detroit is Different channel as well. So okay, cool. I'm glad it came up in your suggestions. And I'm going to do a better job at posting it to the Facebook, posting it to the Instagram, this kind of thing, so that I can build up the audiences. But I want to thank everyone thus far who has continued to support the channel. I'll continue bringing you on Piper Carter Podcast the intersections of environmental justice, hip hop, and feminism. And I want to say thank you to everyone who's joined all the chats. Everyone, please like, share, subscribe, let people know. Come back on over here. If you agree, if you disagree with my take on Katt Williams, let me know. I'm open. I may not change my mind, but I'm going to listen. And I want everyone to enjoy the rest of your week. And I'm going to see y'all next week. Peace.